Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our weekly class. This week we are studying Parashat Vayera, and we're going to learn the holy words of Shimshon, Pincus. And tonight we're going to speak about two brief concepts that hopefully will change your life. So last week, Paro not only refuses to let the Jewish people go, but he actually intensifies the slavery for them. And this week, in this week's Torah portion, Hashem tells Moshe, sit back and watch what I'm going to do to Paro and his nation. Get ready. Kind of like kick up your feet, pull out the popcorn. This one's going to be a really good show. And indeed it was. This week we read about the 7 first plagues of the 10 total that were delivered to Paro in Egypt. And the first plague of blood was one that turned all the water in Egypt to blood, and Paro's wise men, his sorcerers, also turned some water into blood. It was blood, it was fake blood. And Paro therefore hardened his heart and dismissed this plague as if this is no punishment or warning from God at all. The Torah actually goes on to tell us that Paro was not even moved. He was unmoved from this event. Take a look at your screen. This is in Exodus chapter 7, verse 23. Vayifen Paro vayavo el beto. And Paro turned away and he went home. Velo shat libo gam lazot. And he paid no heed even to this. He did not blink an eye for the fact that Hashem changed all the water in Egypt to blood. So Rabbi Pincus wants to know, how is it that Paro can just make it as if nothing happened? This was a national catastrophe. You have to understand that the Nile was a god. It was their source of water. It was basically all of the livelihood of the entire country depended on the Nile, and now it just turned to blood. No problem. Turns around, goes home. How could it be? Rabbi Pincus explains that when someone doesn't think and contemplate about the things that are happening to them, in truth, then nothing affects them. If one doesn't think, not only does nothing affect them, Rabbi Pincus says, it's a crime. The truth is we are all somewhat guilty of this as well, because we sometimes hear or see things that should cause us to shake us up, cause us to act differently or change our ways. But we don't. It could be a tragedy. It could be something that we heard of, that we saw, that we read, a story. We find excuses to dismiss any reason why we need to take this as a sign of God and as a need to change. This is what Paro did as well. He didn't let it penetrate his heart. He obviously saw what happened, but he wouldn't admit. He wouldn't admit and now come to the conclusion, okay, fine, let's let the Jewish people free. No. So on this introductory part from Rav Pincus is we need to make an extra effort not to be like Paro, and to rather be mindful of things we see and hear and read about, and act accordingly. Let things like that make us emotional and start thinking. So the first lesson from Rav Pincus this week is to be mindful. The concept of mindfulness is so deep. It's thinking before you act and speak and do 100%. But mindfulness is also registering what is going on in your lives, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're experiencing, and understanding that it's all signs from God. How can you better your ways? Next concept. Let's fast forward. So that was the first plague. And now let's go to the last plague in this week's Torah portion, the 7th plague. 7th plague is coming down really hard on Egypt. Boulders of ice and fire. It's called Makat Barad. And Paro called Moses and Aaron to come because he just couldn't take it anymore. I want to show you this verse. It's in chapter 9, verse 27. Vaishlach Paro. Paro sends to summon Vaikra Moshe Ulaharon to call Moses and Aaron quickly. Vayomer Alem, he tells them, Chatati apam, okay, I've sinned this time. Hashem atzadik v'ani v'amya rishaim. God is the righteous one, and me and I and my people are the ones who are guilty. He tells him basically to quickly go and pray to Hashem to stop this hail. It's too much. So look at what Moses' answer is. Take a look at your screen. This is in chapter 9, verse 29. Moshe says, when I leave the city, efrosk et kapai el Hashem, then I'll spread out my hands to the Lord. Hakolot yachdelun v'abarad lo ye'od leman teda ki l'Hashem haaretz. And the thunder will cease, and there'll be no more hail, in order that you know that the land is the Lord's. So Rav Pincus goes on to explain that. Rav Pincus brings Rashi that tells us that Moses did not want to pray in Egypt because there were so many idols. And he was worried, Rav Pincus explains, that the idols and the idolatry may have a negative effect and destructive impact on his prayers. So instead of praying in an impure place, he wanted to leave the city and then be able to pray. That's what it says, when I leave the city. Rav Pincus says, to us this seems like a great testimony of Moses' greatness and his stature. However, he said there are those who claim that, on the contrary, Moses should have been able to pray in Egypt. He should have been able to concentrate and connect with Hashem even in that place, even with the surrounding of idols. So accordingly, he wants to know, Rav Pincus, why did Moshe actually have to leave to pray? So he tells us a fascinating concept. He says, indeed, even if the idolatrous surrounding that Moses was around and found himself in did have an impact on Moses' prayer, even a little bit. And it would have been better, and it is better, for him to leave before he prays. Even Moses at that high level, that surrounding did have an impact on him. Rav Pincus says from here we learn a massive lesson about the influence of one's surroundings. And we see that even many generations ago, over 3,300 years ago, that surroundings do have an impact even on the greatest people. King David writes in Tehillim, Psalms chapter 106, verse 35, "Vayit'arevu bagoyim vayilmedu ma'asehem," and they mingled with the nations and they learned their deeds. If a Jew mingles with the nations, they will start acting like the Gentiles. The Maimonides writes, the Rambam writes, that it is of human nature for one to be influenced by his peers and adopt the ways of the people and of his country that he's living in. It's just a fact. Rav Pincus says, we can't say, oh, I don't care about my surroundings, I'm different, it won't affect me. It's impossible. The way Hashem created us, that it's our nature for us to be influenced by our surroundings. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you surround yourself with people who speak foul language or derogatory words or swear words, with time, and it doesn't take too long, you start thinking that way because that's what you hear all day. And then you start speaking that way. The type of words people use around you, you'll start using. The accent also rubs off. Many people who would, let's say, move from here to England or from England to here, their accent changes. The food we eat is also highly influenced on where we live or where our parents came from. The way we dress, the clothes we wear, the way we cut our hair, the entertainment that we are, and sports that we are drawn to. All these things are because of the external influences of our surroundings. And now often people wonder, well, Why and how is it possible to be influenced through osmosis? The answer is that when there is somewhat of a connection and a similarity between people, there's almost no way to stop the influence. But if there's no similarity and the connection is blocked, then the influence will be blocked as well. And Rav Pincus explains, if a person were to be working in the barn with chickens, does the farmer ever have the urge to crawl into the chicken coop and start screeching like a chicken? No. Even after many years and decades of doing that work, they don't have that. Why? Because a human being is not influenced by a chicken, because there's no similarity between us and chickens. But if a Jew is able to get to the level of understanding that we're so different than our surroundings, then they can psychologically understand there's no similarity between us and them, and then there's no threat of being influenced. But that's rare, if not impossible. Because even though we know we're very different than Goyim, but at the end of the day, we have 10 fingers, they have 10 fingers. We walk upright, they walk upright. We need to eat and sleep and work and do things. They do the exact same things. So it's very hard for us to have zero connection with them, zero similarity with them to stop the influence. So how do we protect ourselves from being influenced by our surroundings? So I want to give two different approaches, and they're based on what Rav Pincus says. Firstly, is understanding that influence or being influenced by our surroundings is not a bad thing. It's the way Hashem created us. It's got to be for a good. And there is a good reason. The positive side of influence is the ability to position yourself around great people, wise people, and have that rub off on you. When you surround yourself with people who speak a very high vernacular, a high vocabulary, you start speaking like them as well. When you have people that are always speaking about Torah and philosophy and wisdom, that's what goes on in your head too. If you're around people that all they speak about is business, you're going to be a businessman. That's the way it is. So we have an obligation to surround ourselves, position ourselves around people that will have good influence on us, good influence on our children. Secondly, what if you don't have the luxury of surrounding yourself with great people? How can you protect yourself? So Rav Pincus says that the Zohar and the Talmud multiple times mention that God and the Torah are one. They're one and the same. That Kudsha berichu ve'oraita chadhu. And the Torah cannot be connected to something impure. It cannot become impure either. Just like Hashem, because they're one. So Hashem entered Egypt, even though there was full of idols. He came by the slaying of the firstborn. He came in and he passed over the Jewish people. God did not become impure. Like compared to Moses, Moses had to leave the city, but God came into the city, right? Based on this, Rav Pincus says, and it's a deep concept, the only way to stay strong and uninfluenced is not just through prayer or Torah, by prayer and by mitzvot. Rather, it's through studying Torah, because Torah equates God. It's at the same level as God. And Torah will shape our minds and help us shelter ourselves from our surroundings and influences. So it's a very, very important concept. The concept that the way to shelter ourselves, protect ourselves from our negative influences is not only surrounding ourselves around great people and wise people, but it's a constant involvement in education of Torah, which in and of itself is as if we're connecting directly to God. So the two lessons from Rav Pincus this week is, number one, don't live a mindless life. Rather, we have an obligation to internalize what happens to us and what we see and act accordingly. Second is, our surroundings do influence us. You can't say it doesn't. You can't say you're different. You're not different. You're a human being like each and every one of us. And the only way to combat negative influences is, number one, by situating yourself around the proper and great people. And number two, by studying Torah. Torah will be that which protects us and guides us to be great, amazing people.